A sea of ice formations at the highest mountain in the city. Extended cross-border travel services during the Lunar New Year. And in the U.S., Nikki Haley wins the first 6 votes in the Republican New Hampshire primary. Hello and welcome to TVB News. Today is the coldest day so far this winter. The observatory recorded a low temperature of 6.3 degrees Celsius this morning. At Tai Mo Shan, the city's highest mountain, the mercury dipped to minus 2.4 degrees, and frost formed on the green foliage. Timothy Lee has our top story.
A garden of ice on the grass and leaves everywhere. At Tai Mo Shan this morning, scenes like this were common across the peak, with layers of frost covering whole trees. Thick fog blurred much of the scenery, with the temperature dropping to minus 2.4 degrees earlier today. Despite the harsh weather conditions, some still decided to trek up the peak in the early hours of the day. This hiker said he is used to the weather here, and he found the frost formations beautiful. This photography enthusiast said he didn't want to miss out on the rare opportunity to capture a scene like this. He added the last time he encountered a scene like this was around 8 years ago. Besides plants, frost formations could even be spotted on the hair of a TVB News reporter. Police cordoned off parts of Tai Mo Shan Road at one time, instructing motorists to leave the area. Back in the urban area, where temperatures dropped to between 6 and 7 degrees, some residents continue to take their morning dip around Hung Hom, undeterred by the cold weather. This man said he swam for around half an hour, but stressed the weather was a lot colder today. Weather authorities noted the low temperatures were caused by an intense winter monsoon, which is bringing very cold weather to Guangdong. They added the 6.3 degrees recorded at the observatory this morning is the lowest temperature recorded since the start of this winter. It will still be cold in the morning on Thursday and Friday. But warmth could still be found in parts of the city's secondary schools. To combat the cold weather, students distributed hot drinks to their peers at this school in Kwai Chung during recess. Some healthcare practitioners offered advice on how to deal with the chilly weather. Lam Po Yan, vice president of the Hong Kong Registered Chinese Medicine Practitioners Association, reminded residents to keep the bottom of their feet and necks warm. Pediatrician David Lee reminded parents of infants not to put too many layers of clothing on their children, stressing that the weight could cause serious discomfort to the babies, especially if they are not able to turn their bodies. Timothy Lee, TVB News.
Former Next Digital Media CEO Chung Kim-hung today testified that former media tycoon Jimmy Lai said it did not matter if protesters caused damage and destruction to shops during the 2019 anti-government riots. Chung made the statement in court as part of his direct examination. This is the 14th day of Lai's national security trial. Lai had earlier pleaded not guilty to 1 count of sedition and 2 charges related to the national security law. Mimo Singai has more.
Armed police were on guard outside the West Kowloon Law Courts. Prosecutor Anthony Chow may continue his direct examination of Chung Kim-hung, the former CEO of Next Digital Media, as the trial of Jimmy Lai entered its 14th day. Chow focused on the editorial policy of the Hong Kong edition of Apple Daily. Chung said Lai supported a policy act signed by then U.S. President Donald Trump, including the Hong Kong Human Rights and Democracy Act in November 2019. Lai said Trump delivered and not just talked. The prosecutor then mentioned Apple Daily's student subscription plan by showing a front-page article published on November 19, 2019. A banner reading "Support students to read Apple Daily" appeared in the left-hand corner of the page. Chung said Lai hoped the public could donate to Apple Daily by financially supporting students aged between 10 and 22 to read the newspaper for free. The former CEO explained Lai praised the youngsters for defending their homes and sacrificing, and hoped they could be loyal readers of Apple Daily. Chen said his former boss was fully devoted to the protest movement in the latter part of 2019. He held banners and took part in demonstrations. The prosecutor then presented 4 articles in court asking Chen if they were aligned with the editorial policy of Apple Daily. Chen said yes and said he believed Lai's stance was to keep peaceful and valiant people together to increase the chances of the movement succeeding. Chen also said Lai's interpretation of bravery was radical in actions. He said Lai did not consider acts of smashing shops during the movement as a problem, saying such behavior reflected people's dedication. Lai wrote an article for a special edition of the 25th anniversary of Apple Daily. In his article, Lai mentioned foreign support and attention and long live the foreign power. Chen said foreign support referred to overseas political figures who would subscribe to the English edition of Apple Daily. Lai said this could provide protection for the newspaper in Hong Kong. The trial is adjourned until Wednesday.
During the trial, Jimmy Lai had his headphones on to follow the proceedings because of his slight hearing problem. The former media tycoon sometimes had his arms folded. Mimos 9, TVB News.
The government has announced arrangements for extending cross-border travel services during the Lunar New Year. This includes 24-hour cross-border services between the 9th and 13th of February at the Shenzhen Bay Port. Cross-border services at the Lowu Port will remain open until 2 a.m. on the 9th and 11th of next month. Authorities said they believe the move will attract more tourists to the city during the holiday. Timothy Lee tells us more.
Hong Kong will soon have the chance to repair its image as a tourist hotspot during the Chinese New Year holiday. This after the incidents involving mainland visitors having to wait in long queues for public transport after New Year's Eve celebrations. Prior to today's Executive Council meeting, Chief Executive John Lee said he has secured extended cross-border service hours after coming to an agreement with Shenzhen authorities. Starting on the 9th of February, that's the eve of Chinese New Year, 24-hour cross-border services will be available at Shenzhen Bay Port for 5 days. Similar services will extend to 2 in the morning at the Lowu Port on February 9th and 11th of next month, when there will be fireworks celebrations. The MTR's East Rail line is arranging train services to fit the adjusted schedule. The CE stressed Chinese New Year is an important day to the Chinese people, and that the government will do all it can to ensure everyone enjoys the holiday atmosphere. This afternoon, Deputy Chief Secretary for Administration Warner Chuk predicted around 7.5 million people will pass through the border over the course of the Lunar New Year, with around 80% of them traveling through the Lowu Port. In a bid to prevent a repeat of the long queues on the 1st of January, the government announced private cars must have relevant permits when crossing the border between the 9th and 13th of next month. Timothy Lee, TVB News.
Chief Secretary for Administration Eric Chan is attending a United Nations Working Group meeting in Switzerland. In his speech to the Universal Periodic Review Working Group of the United Nations Human Rights Council, he said one country, 2 systems has been the cornerstone of Hong Kong. The meeting began at 4 p.m. Hong Kong time. The working group examined the 4th report of China, which included the human rights situation in Hong Kong. In the meeting, Chief Secretary for Administration Eric Chan spoke as part of the China delegation. He said Hong Kong has regained its stability after the implementation of the national security law. He added residents continued to enjoy rights and freedoms in accordance with the law while judicial independence is maintained. A magnitude 7.1 earthquake struck mainland China's western Xinjiang region early today. Officials said it injured 6 people and damaged or collapsed more than 120 homes. This was the moment when the quake struck. It rocked Ukturpan County, called Wuxi County in Putonghua, in Aksu Prefecture, shortly after 2 a.m. The epicenter was at a depth of 22 kilometers. State broadcaster CCTV said around 200 rescuers were dispatched to the area, and a dozen aftershocks occurred. Tremors were also felt in Kyrgyzstan and Kazakhstan, two neighboring countries. In the Kazakh capital, Almaty, some people left their homes quickly and were pictured standing outside in freezing temperatures in shorts. In the U.S., Donald Trump is aiming for a commanding victory in today's Republican primary in New Hampshire against his last main challenger, former UN Ambassador Nikki Haley. A clean sweep of the first two GOP primary races after his win in Iowa last week would make a November rematch with President Joe Biden look more likely. However, Haley is aiming for a major upset as she targets the state's independent-minded electorate. Nazvi Karim with more.
A blanket of snow outside the property where voting takes place in the tiny resort town of Dixville Notch in New Hampshire. These people are the first ones to cast their ballots in this remote town, which has a tradition of voting at midnight in the first-in-the-nation presidential primary. A total of 6 registered voters. The results were announced just a few minutes after midnight, and all 6 votes went to Nikki Haley. However, with such a tiny sample of voters, the results are not typically indicative of how an election will end up. The 52-year-old Haley has devoted significant time and financial resources into New Hampshire, which her rival Donald Trump won in the 2016 primaries. The state has a large number of independent voters who Haley hopes will help her cause a major upset. With Florida Governor Ron DeSantis pulling out of the Republican president race on Sunday, Haley is hoping to lure some of his supporters, though most are expected to vote for Trump.
I mean, this is almost a year of campaigning, and it's been doing the personal touches, touching every hand, answering every question, being the last person to leave, really building relationships with the people in New Hampshire and letting them know that they can trust me. And so I think that's what this is all coming down to. We're excited.
With popular New Hampshire Governor Chris Sununu in her camp, Haley needs a victory in the state to make the Republican race more competitive after Trump's record-breaking triumph in Iowa. Haley campaigned in 5 cities in New Hampshire on Monday. Trump rallied in just one, Laconia. Victory for Trump in the state would leave him as the overwhelming favorite to contest November's election after only 2 primary elections. He told voters Haley is easy to beat and even joked about the 4 criminal trials and 91 indictments he faces, pleading not guilty to all of them.
The radical left Democrats are supporting Nikki for one simple reason, because they know that she's very easy to beat. And you see that with the polls that just came out tonight. We're beating Biden by so much. Probably get indicted 3 or 4 more times by tomorrow. They're going to indict. They're going to keep indicting, and it keeps driving my numbers up. I can't figure that one out. I'm going to donate. But I believe she's not electable.
Trump was joined on stage in Laconia by 3 of his former primary rivals, Senators Tim Scott, entrepreneur Vivek Ramaswamy, and North Dakota Governor Doug Burgum. Nazvi Karim, TVB News.
Still ahead, and UK authorities urge parents to have their kids vaccinated against measles. In Canada, the government has announced a 2-year cap on international student visas. The move aims to ease the pressure on housing, healthcare, and other services amid record immigration. Canada's Immigration Minister Mark Miller said new study visas will be reduced by 35% in 2024. He said it's time to rein in those exploiting the country's international students program by offering sham degrees and putting pressure on housing and healthcare. The number of new visas handed out will be capped at 364,000. Nearly 560,000 such visas were issued last year. The government said about 1 million foreign students are in the country now, triple that of 3 years ago. In the UK, health officials are urging millions of parents to book their children for missed measles, mumps, and rubella shots amid a sharp increase in the number of measles cases. Officials say 216 confirmed measles cases have been detected and 103 probable cases in parts of England since October. Most cases are in children under 10 years old. The combined measles, mumps, and rubella, or MMR vaccine, is offered in the UK in 2 doses to all children at 12 months and 3 years old. UK vaccination rates have dropped to about 85%, with officials saying more than 3.4 million children are at risk. Officials are concerned outbreaks can't take place anywhere where the vaccine coverage is below the 95% needed to achieve herd immunity. That's the news. Thanks for watching. Bye for now.